The judge looked straight at my father and asked one simple question. Can you explain why every medical payment for your dying wife was refused while more than $3 million was quietly transferred into accounts controlled by you and your sons? My father smiled with the same confidence he had worn for years. That smile disappeared the moment I placed one final document on the evidence table. Before we begin, please like and subscribe. Now, get comfortable and enjoy. My name is Emma. I am the eldest child in my family. I have 2 younger brothers and a father who always believed a daughter was nothing more than temporary responsibility. My mother was the only person who ever made me feel truly loved. She used to tell me that kindness was strength, not weakness. I believed her for many years. I had no idea kindness without boundaries could become the perfect weapon for cruel people. My mother had been sick for as long as I could remember. Hospitals became as familiar to me as grocery stores. The sharp smell of antiseptic. The steady beeping of heart monitors. The thin blankets that never felt warm enough. Those memories followed me into adulthood. My father never stayed long during hospital visits. He always claimed he had important business meetings. His expensive cedarwood cologne lingered in the room for barely 5 minutes before he disappeared. My brothers copied him perfectly. They posted smiling vacation photos online while my mother struggled to breathe through oxygen tubes. Every bill arrived at my apartment because I was the emergency contact. Every prescription refill became my responsibility. I worked 12-hour days as a financial analyst, earning $92,000 a year before taxes. My savings slowly disappeared into specialist appointments, medications, rehabilitation sessions, and private nursing care. I never complained because she was my mother. Whenever I asked my father to contribute, he laughed. He owned multiple commercial buildings, a successful logistics company, and a luxury home worth nearly $4 million. Money was never his problem. Compassion was. He always gave the same answer. She isn't going to recover. Spending more money changes nothing. Those words never left my mind. My brothers agreed with him every single time. They drove luxury SUVs. They wore watches costing more than my annual rent. Yet somehow they always claimed they were struggling financially. Whenever my mother's treatment required another payment, then everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon. The hospital called while I was reviewing quarterly investment reports. My mother's condition had suddenly deteriorated. I grabbed my coat, ignored every unfinished task on my desk, and drove through heavy traffic with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I reached the emergency department, doctors were already preparing for immediate surgery. The estimated cost exceeded everything I still had. I called my father first. He rejected the call. I called my older brother. He sent a single message, busy. I called my younger brother. His phone remained switched off. For the first time in my life, I understood exactly how alone my mother and I truly were. I begged the admissions office for more time. I offered to sign every financial guarantee they could possibly require. I even showed them my investment accounts, my retirement savings, and every available credit line. None of it came close to covering the amount needed for the operation. Hospital policy was clear. The doctors would continue emergency stabilization, but specialized treatment required immediate authorization and funding. I called my father again. This time he answered. His voice sounded irritated, as though I had interrupted an enjoyable lunch. I explained every detail as calmly as I could. The surgeon believed my mother still had a chance if treatment started immediately. There was a long silence. Then he sighed. Emma, stop acting emotional. Your mother has lived long enough. I froze. For a second, I honestly thought I had misunderstood him. Then he continued. People die every day. We all know she won't recover. Throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars away is simply bad business. Bad business. He described my mother's life with the same words he used during company meetings. I whispered that she was still his wife. He laughed. Legally, yes. The call ended before I could answer. I stood in the hallway, staring at my phone. Something inside me disappeared forever. Not hope. Not grief. Illusion. The illusion that someday he would become a decent man. The surgeons did everything they could. I stayed beside my mother until the machines became quieter. She opened her eyes only once. Her hand searched for mine. I held it carefully. She smiled despite the pain. "You always stayed." Those were the last words she ever spoke. She died before sunrise. The funeral was held 3 days later. My father cried in front of relatives. My brothers lowered their heads with convincing expressions of sorrow. People praised them for their strength. I remained silent. Real grief does not perform. It simply survives. A week later, my father invited me to his office. The building overlooked the downtown skyline through enormous floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything inside reflected wealth. Italian marble floors. Custom walnut furniture. Original artwork worth hundreds of thousands. He poured himself an expensive glass of 18-year-old whiskey before sliding an envelope across the desk. "Your share." Inside was a cashier's check. $5,000. I looked at him. Surely this had to be some advance payment. He leaned back comfortably. "The company belongs with the boys. They understand business." I asked about my mother's estate. He smiled. "There isn't anything for you." I reminded him that she had inherited property from her parents decades earlier. His smile never moved. Everything was transferred years ago. That answer felt rehearsed. Too smooth. Too immediate. I left without another word. Outside, I sat inside my aging sedan for nearly an hour. I unfolded the check again. $5,000. That was apparently the value of my loyalty. The value of every sleepless hospital night. The value of holding my mother's hand while everyone else abandoned her. I did not cry. Instead, I opened my laptop. I searched property records. Corporate filings. Historical tax documents. Probate records. Bankruptcy filings. Anything connected to my parents. By midnight, I had already found my first inconsistency. It was small. Almost invisible. But experienced financial analysts know something important. Tiny accounting irregularities usually hide enormous lies. I requested certified copies of every public filing connected to my father's company over the previous 15 years. Most people never read those records. I read every page. Balance sheets. Shareholder amendments. Property transfers. Director appointments. Annual tax declarations. Hidden inside thousands of ordinary lines was a pattern that became impossible to ignore. Several commercial properties once registered jointly under my mother and father had quietly changed ownership. The dates bothered me. Each transfer happened while my mother was heavily medicated during long hospital stays. The signatures looked almost identical. Almost. I enlarged every document. The pressure points differed. The angle of the letters changed. The final stroke of her surname never matched older records. Someone had practiced copying her signature. I contacted a respected forensic document examiner without telling anyone in my family. The examination cost $8,400. It was money I could barely afford. The report arrived 12 days later. My hands trembled while opening the envelope. The conclusion was short. High probability of signature simulation. In plain English, the signatures were almost certainly forged. That single report transformed my suspicion into a legal strategy. I hired an estate attorney with 28 years of litigation experience. His office walls displayed framed verdicts against powerful corporations. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he folded his hands and asked one question. "Do you want a settlement, or do you want the truth?" "The truth," I answered. He nodded once. "Then prepare yourself. Powerful people rarely surrender quietly." Our investigation expanded. Bank statements revealed unusual transfers exceeding $3,200,000 over 7 years. Money had moved through shell companies before returning to businesses controlled by my father and brothers. The transactions were designed to appear legitimate. They were clever, but not perfect. One transfer referenced medical trust expenses. There was no medical trust. Another listed consulting services paid to a company that existed only on paper. Every discovery made my father's confidence easier to understand. He believed nobody would ever examine the details. He underestimated the daughter he had ignored for years. Meanwhile, my brothers continued living extravagantly. One purchased a new sports car worth nearly $200,000. The other posted photographs from a luxury resort in Greece. Their captions talked about family values and gratitude. I saved every photograph, every timestamp, every public statement. Evidence is not always found inside filing cabinets. Sometimes people willingly publish it themselves. Months passed. I said nothing. Whenever relatives asked about the inheritance, I simply smiled and changed the subject. My father interpreted my silence as defeat. He invited business associates to expensive dinners. He boasted that the family company would remain under the men's control for generations. One evening I attended a charity gala where he was receiving an award for community leadership. He shook hands, accepted applause, delivered a speech about honesty and sacrifice. I watched from the back of the ballroom. The attorney standing beside me quietly whispered, "Arrogance is useful. It makes people careless." The following morning our legal team filed a civil lawsuit. The complaint exceeded 100 pages. Forgery, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, undue influence, asset concealment, financial misconduct, requests for emergency preservation of records, orders preventing further asset transfers. Every allegation was supported by documents. Not opinions. Documents. Within 48 hours, my father's attorneys began calling. For the first time since my mother's funeral, he wanted to speak with me urgently. I ignored the first 3 calls. I ignored the emails. I ignored the message asking whether we could settle the matter privately as a family. Family. That word suddenly appeared only after lawyers became involved. For years I had been useful only when hospital bills arrived. Now I was suddenly family again. My attorney advised me to remain completely silent. Every conversation would go through legal counsel. Every request would be documented. Every response would become part of the record. My father hated losing control. He arrived unannounced at my apartment one Saturday morning. A black luxury sedan stopped outside. He stepped out wearing an Italian suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. My brothers followed behind him. The oldest tried to smile. The youngest refused to meet my eyes. I opened the door but never invited them inside. My father spoke first. "You've embarrassed this family enough." I answered quietly. "No." The lawsuit simply described what happened. His face tightened. He offered me $200,000 if I withdrew every claim. I almost laughed. $200,000. He believed I had spent months building an airtight legal case just to negotiate a larger payment. He still did not understand me. "I don't want your money," I replied. "I want accountability." My older brother suddenly exploded. He accused me of trying to destroy everything our father had built. I looked directly at him. "You mean everything Mom built with him before you pushed her aside?" His expression changed instantly. Guilt flashed across his face. Only for a second. But I noticed it. The meeting ended without another agreement. As they drove away, my attorney called. A court had approved our emergency request. Independent forensic accountants would receive full access to years of financial records. That was the turning point. The accounting investigation lasted nearly 4 months. Thousands of transactions were reconstructed. Hidden accounts were identified. Deleted emails were recovered from archived company servers. Several invoices had been created after the supposed services were already completed. Dates conflicted. Amounts failed to balance. Electronic metadata contradicted paper records. Every lie created another trail. One afternoon, the lead forensic accountant placed a thick binder on the conference table. He smiled for the first time. We found the missing money. According to the reconstruction, assets intended for my mother's estate had been diverted through multiple corporations before ending in investment accounts controlled by my father. The total exceeded $6,400,000. There was more. One recovered email changed everything. It had been exchanged between my father and the company's longtime accountant just weeks before one of the disputed property transfers. The message contained a single sentence. Make sure she signs before the medication wears off. The accountant replied only 4 words. Everything will be handled. I stared at the printed email for a long time. The room remained silent. No one needed to explain what it meant. They had deliberately taken advantage of my mother's weakened condition. They had planned it. They had documented it. The courtroom was completely full on the first day of trial. Business reporters filled the back rows. Former employees attended out of curiosity. Several relatives avoided looking at me. My father entered confidently. He believed expensive attorneys could explain away every document. He had no idea the most devastating evidence had not yet been presented. I carried 4 organized binders into the courtroom. The final binder remained sealed until the perfect moment arrived. The trial lasted 9 exhausting days. Every morning my father walked into the courtroom wearing a confident smile. Every evening that smile became a little smaller. The forensic document examiner explained exactly why my mother's signatures could not have been genuine. The forensic accountant traced every dollar with detailed charts, bank confirmations, wire transfers, and corporate ledgers. Former employees testified that important financial files were routinely removed whenever my mother asked questions about company ownership. Then the company's retired accountant took the witness stand. No one expected him to cooperate. He adjusted his glasses, looked toward my father, and quietly admitted he had been instructed to prepare false documentation years earlier. The courtroom became completely silent. My father's attorneys immediately objected. The judge allowed the testimony to continue. The retired accountant described meetings, fabricated paperwork, and deliberate attempts to move assets beyond my mother's control while she was receiving powerful medication. He admitted he had remained silent because he feared losing everything. Now, terminally ill himself, he wanted to tell the truth before it was too late. That testimony shook the entire courtroom. But I still had one final piece of evidence. My attorney nodded. I opened the 4th binder. Inside was a certified digital forensic report recovering deleted voice recordings from an old company backup server. The recording was played through the courtroom speakers. My father's unmistakable voice filled the room. If Emma ever asks questions, give her a small check. 5,000 is enough. The boys get everything. By the time she figures it out, the paperwork will be impossible to reverse. No one spoke. Even my brothers stared at the table. The judge removed his glasses and slowly looked toward my father. Is that your voice? He tried denying it. The digital forensic expert explained the authentication process in precise technical detail. The recording had not been altered. It was genuine. The verdict arrived 3 weeks later. Every fraudulent property transfer was declared invalid. The concealed assets were returned to my mother's estate. The court awarded me my lawful inheritance along with substantial damages, legal costs, and interest. The judgment exceeded $8 million. Criminal investigators also opened separate fraud and forgery proceedings. Banks froze multiple accounts. Creditors demanded immediate repayment of hidden debts. Business partners terminated contracts. Investors withdrew. Within months, the company my father had protected so ruthlessly entered insolvency. Luxury vehicles disappeared. The mansion was sold. The vacation homes were auctioned. My brothers blamed each other. My father blamed everyone except himself. He had spent years believing money could erase every consequence. Instead, every dishonest decision became another brick in the wall that finally trapped him. I visited my mother's grave one quiet afternoon carrying fresh white lilies. I told her the truth had finally been heard. The wind moved gently through the trees. For the first time since losing her, my heart felt peaceful. I never celebrated their downfall. Justice was never about revenge alone. It was about restoring dignity to the woman who deserved so much better. Today, I manage the charitable foundation created in my mother's name. It helps families who cannot afford life-saving medical treatment, ensuring no daughter faces the impossible choice I once faced. My future is no longer defined by betrayal. It is defined by purpose, peace, and the courage to stand for what is right. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments what you would have done.